BBC Radio Kent with me, Erika North. I'm here until 6 o'clock. And the next person I'm going to talk about must be telling us about every parent's worst nightmare, because the story of two students from Canterbury who've apparently paid around £12,000 but are currently still not allowed to leave Dubai in a row over a damaged hire car. Stanley Kundishora and James Dua-Wiafi went to the country over 2 months ago to celebrate their birthdays. And we have now Radha Stirling on the boss, who's the boss of Detained in Dubai, which is trying to support their efforts to come home. Good afternoon to you, Radha.
Good afternoon.
This is, I can't imagine how ghastly, as I say, for the families here and, of course, for the two boys themselves. Can you just tell us what happened, please?
Yes, absolutely. The boys went out to Dubai on a short holiday, just a few days. They rented a car and had a small accident that damaged the wheel. When they returned the car, the agency demanded cash from them in excess of what the excess was. So they had insurance. But the agency said to them, if you don't pay, I know what's going to happen to you. I'm local, essentially, and you'll end up in jail if you don't pay. And so they paid the money that he asked for. Then he asked for some more, and it amounted to a total of 12,000. But then he asked for another 150,000 dirhams, which is the equivalent of £30,000. And he seemed to think that they were perhaps footballers or belonged to a football team, that they were quite wealthy. I mean, they were travelling during coronavirus times, in economic crisis, and renting a high-end Range Rover for a few days. So they appeared to be targets, and it seems to be basically an extortion scam. And these are things that we deal with and have dealt with for the past decade. This is not really an isolated case. We have all sorts of incidences of false allegations levied against British nationals or tourists. And they can be rental car scams like this, or they can be false allegations of insulting behaviour, of the middle finger, of swearing, that didn't happen purely to extort money. And essentially they go down to the police station, they open charges against the victim and tell them to pay money and they will drop the charges. So this is not isolated, it's a repeat occurrence. And most people in this situation, especially 20, 21-year-olds, are going to feel very intimidated, and so they should. But if they can, they're going to pay these demands. They're going to hand over the £12,000 that they did. Possibly if they had £30,000, they would have handed that over too. And therefore, these false allegations are very profitable to the locals who know how to manipulate the system.
Incredible, scary for them. I can't imagine that feeling of having to call your mum and dad at their age and say, we owe £12,000, or the mum and dad's reaction at this end. I mean, it's just horrific on so many levels. How are you able to pressure the authorities to, make sure that they can come home? What are you able to do from here to present to the authorities that might make them rethink their decisions?
What we're hoping is that for an incident like this, and the UAE does pump millions of pounds into marketing itself as a tourist destination to British nationals. So we've raised this case to the attention of Sheikh Mohammed, who has intervened in the case of Jamie Harrion previously and a couple of other cases. So we hope that he sees the injustice of this and what these young people are going through, which is completely unfair and, as you say, highly stressful, not just for the boys, but also their families. The mother has been calling Stanley every night, crying over the phone, and they've been told that they're facing 1 to 1.5 years in prison over the false allegation. Now, the allegation against them was that of assault, and the CCTV evidence that we've reviewed and that is available to the police shows that there was no such assault. So it's a completely fake allegation. The evidence is in their favour, and we hope, therefore, that the Dubai authorities will see this as negative for the country overall and negative for marketing the country to potential tourists in the future. On the other side, we need to lobby the British government to get involved and diplomatically try to resolve this with their counterparts in Dubai.
Obviously, you've seen this before, Radha. You're very experienced in cases like this. How do they usually turn out?
In cases where there is enough international attention, enough international spotlight in the media, they're the cases that are going to resolve much faster than a case that hasn't gone to press or hasn't had that government intervention or the support of the FCO. And they don't usually get that support until BBC, for example, covers it, or that we can shed light to what is an injustice, and then people start to care about it. Now, if they do, hopefully the boys will be home very quickly, but otherwise they would absolutely be subject to a lengthy arrest, lengthy detention. They would be prosecuted and convicted without evidence and sentenced to months in prison. So it's that important that the international press actually cares about it, because they're the only people, they're the only groups that make the UAE accountable for these injustices.
Well, thank you so much for being able to come on to BBC Radio Kent this afternoon, Radha, and explaining the situation to us. It is very concerning. Radha Stirling, they're the boss of Detained in Dubai, and we should mention the car hire company does deny these allegations completely. But thank you for speaking to us tonight, Radha, and we do wish the boys well and wish you every success in your attempts to bring them back home.